When I go to Washington, one of the first things that I'll fight for, obviously, is repeal Obamacare. It's got to be the number one thing. It's one of the things that is on everybody's mind. Businesses, as far as expanding, they don't know what this new health code is going to be. Doctors are saying, hey, it's not worth it for me to practice anymore in America. In Oklahoma, we had the first wave of Obamacare coming in with a $54 million offer of health insurance exchanges. I fought that on the House floor. I'll fight that same fight in Washington, D.C. because it's unconstitutional and we need to repeal it, and we need to repeal it soon. I was a typical country boy. I spent my summers fishing, running through the field barefoot. We had horses, we had cows, and it was just, the country life. My father was a welder part-time and did ranching, and my dad taught us hard work. He taught us that, you do the job right, and you work until it's done. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me is whenever I did meet Becky. I met her at church. Actually met her father first.
First met George when our church was having a youth crusade. George was one of the young men that came forward, and I had the privilege of introducing him to Jesus Christ. And little did I know that someday he would be my son-in-law.
Her family adopted me into their family. They included me into everything that they did. They became mentors to me. They encouraged me, and I became like one of the brothers. And that's when I met Becky, and she and I were best friends for 5 years. And then when she went off to college, those feelings began to become deeper.
George is a wonderful husband. He not only loves me, but he cherishes me. And he has a servant's heart. And at the core, that's what makes him different from most men. As a father, he loves his children. George is a loving father, very interested in his children.
Fatherhood is probably the best proving ground for your character because you're instilling into their lives what you want them to be.
The big thing that I got from Dad is the hard work, a good work ethic. It was something that he learned growing up on the farm, in the dairy, and from his parents. And it's just something that he passed down to us. It's just a biblical principle that you do everything as unto the Lord, and you try to do it to the best of your ability. And that's a very important lesson. It's something that's not very prevalent in today's society. It's something we need a lot more of. He's always put his whole being into whatever he does, whether it's working, whether it's educating us children, and at the state capitol as a state legislator. It's something that he'll do in Congress. He doesn't do things half-hearted.
As a small businessman, I understand how all these regulations, how the tax codes are not built for success. They hamper your business. They hamper your potential. Small businessmen are hurting because the size and the scope of government is so huge, and they're bearing the brunt of it. Pretty soon, they're going to decide that it's not worth it anymore. That's why it's so important that we push back against the federal government. The great thing about Oklahoma is that we've always had a great history of oil and gas. It's been what has made Oklahoma. And the oil capital of the world was in Tulsa at one time. And we've got to get back to that. We've got to get back to producing our own energy because that means jobs. It's an industry that is very expensive, and they invest in our country. They invest in our security. They invest in our employment. Let's produce that here so that we can stand on our own 2 feet and not be dependent upon what happens in the Middle East.
I watched George work in District 14 in this Oklahoma House, and his striving to accomplish good things. George had a moral guidance of the right and wrong that we don't see so much of anymore.
I think one of George's greatest strengths is his commitment to his convictions. He's willing to stand on principle.
He votes his convictions. He's committed. He will not back down from his convictions.
My dad has always been a servant, and he's shown all of us kids that we should put aside what we want in order to help others. And he showed that in his church life and his family life, even going to the state capitol. And that's what he'll give when he goes to Washington.
He's got basic principles based upon the scriptures, and that's what our country was founded on, and I believe that we need more of that. George in Washington, I believe, can make a difference.
As a successful small businessman, I know what the struggles are every day. I've been out there for 24 years in a very competitive business. I know what it means to work hard. I know what it means to sacrifice and work those extra hours. And it brings about rewards that you can't always count in numbers. And I think that helps communities. Whenever they see people working hard, it spurs them on to try to be successful as well. Obama wants government to be everything for everybody, and that's not the kind of government that I want. We are at a critical crossroads, and we're about to lose our very freedoms if we don't act now. The policies that have been in place for the last 3 years are killing this country. We're losing our good standing in the world. We're losing our ability to have a free market. And if we don't push back now, we will lose the American dream that we want to pass on to our kids. We want our kids to have a future. We want them to have a legacy that they can be proud of, a legacy that they can think, I can achieve more than my parents did. And we don't have that right now. We've got a government that has lost touch. We've got a government that has become burdensome, and it's time to shrink it. It's time to cut it. It's time to balance the budget. It's time to cut the spending, and let's get this country back on a level playing field. Let's get it on a sound foundation financially. And then we need to work to bring it back to the strength that it was. And we can do that. It just takes people with courage and with conviction who are not going up there looking for a career. People who are going up there to change the culture in D.C.
I often say after that, I don't know that I can add a whole lot to it, but let me just say, first of all, Lynn, thank you for working around my schedule. It's a big deal to balance both, because being responsible for the duty that you've been given as a state rep and fulfill that duty, and then campaign across 26 counties. So I appreciate your working with my schedule as well. But folks, we are facing some interesting times for America. People probably thought we would never be in this position, where we look and we see what's happening as far as the foundations of our government crumbling. And they're crumbling from within because of our own doing. If you look and see what's happened with the size of government, if you look and see where government has now moved into almost every area of our life, our financial world, even our personal faith, our business, energy, education, it's become the monster in the room that is out of control. And what we've got to do is that we've got to get that monster back in the cage. And it's going to take work. It's going to take efforts. And this election is going to be the most important election for America because of the direction we could go with the same leadership in the president's office. The second district is very important. Don't get that wrong, but the next presidential election is even more important because it will set the course for the next 4 years. And we can't afford 4 more years of Obama. And I think we can all agree with that. But what can we do? What can we do? We can be bold and we can move forward with ideas. We can, let me just give you the 4 basic principles that we are running, I'm running as a campaign. 4 things that I see that are important. First of all, America needs to get back to work. And it's not for the government to decide and to create the jobs for Americans to get back to work. In my opinion, it's the government needs to get out of the way. The government is hampering jobs, and they do that in lots of ways, with regulations, with the way that they control everything. Obamacare, We've got to repeal it. We know that it's in the courts. But let me tell you what's happened for the last couple of years, and we've seen it on the state level. Pieces of Obamacare are being implemented now through every healthcare authority in every state across this nation. Because they're trying to lay the groundwork that if it takes place, they've got to be ready for it. It's already there. Trust me. Then we've got to, how are we going to get those jobs? We're going to build on our strengths. What is one of Oklahoma's greatest strengths? That's its energy. We've got oil and gas that we need to tap. You know, we've all heard, I know if you've been in any of the meetings with all the other candidates and watched the news, we all know what's happening in North Dakota. Because they're extracting the oil and gas out of the shale, they don't have any hotels. They don't have any rooms. You have to go to another state if you want to go work in that in North Dakota. It's happening in western Oklahoma as well. I found out that when we were in Cushing at an oil field supply place, waving at the president as he zoomed by headed to the Keystone Pipeline facility up there, we found out that there's a hotel that hasn't even been built yet, and it's booked for 2 years in western Oklahoma because of the oil and gas industry. And it's not just the direct jobs, it's all the supply jobs that come with it, all the restaurants. So let's build our foundation on our own energy. Let's become energy independent of the rest of the world, and we can do it. We can do that. We just have to get those regulations out of the way. You know, there's not been a new refinery built in probably at least 40 years from what I understand. That's old technology. And then let's stand up for faith and family, because that's going to be the next battleground. That's what we're fighting right now at the state capitol. It's all about who defines what life is. And if you ask me, life begins at conception. And that's going to be the moral battleground that's going to sail across this country. We've had some ladies in pink shirts sitting in the gallery all week because they don't believe that life begins at conception. So what we need to do is send someone who is ready and is battle-tested to go to work the first day. I've had a small business for 24 years, carpet plating. So I've got the small business experience. I'm finishing my 3rd term as a state rep. I've been told by a lot of folks that in 6 years you've seen just about everything that you're going to see, and it's just going to be repeated for the next 6 years. So as far as experience, I've got the experience. And I've got the proven track record of being a conservative. So those are the issues that are facing us. And we're going to tackle those because we're ready to go. And let me just tell you about the campaign. The campaign is going extremely well. I don't know if, did anyone get a flyer this week? We were endorsed last Thursday by Mike Huckabee. Unheard of for Mike Huckabee to endorse in a 6-person primary. But he checked me out. He checked out my voting record, he checked out my stands on issues, and he said, this is the guy that I want to put my stamp of approval on. We've got to send someone up there who is ready from day one to go to work. We don't have time to waste. You know, I could probably say this in this group, that your Christian faith is the core. Everything